Well, 2 weeks ago, I responded to a comment from a gentleman in Seattle who is I believe was with the UW and involved in the sort of the I don't want to say the business of, but maybe the study of birds, I guess is the best way to put it. He was a birder, and he had suggested that the reason that there was a push by the port to get rid of the Caspian terns down at the GP site was because the state is fully supportive of killing anything that tries to eat salmonids, the little baby salmon, as they're making their way along the waterway there. I had suggested that that was not entirely accurate, that the reason we wanted to have the Caspian terns, or as I've coined them, the squatter birds, move back from whence they came, since they had just arrived last year for the first time, was that we actually wanted to redevelop the site and had nothing to do with salmon at all. There then was a blog that was written by a gentleman with the pseudonym Apex Nerd, APEXNERD. And he had suggested that I was wrong to want to have the birds go away because having the birds there was a huge economic benefit potentially to the community, and that we ought to be looking for ways to draw revenue off of it and leave the site alone. Interesting thought, but I gave him the benefit of the doubt and started to do some research on this. And I found a study. This is from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. It's called Birding in the United States, a Demographic and Economic Analysis. A very interesting study, about 45 pages long, that goes through a number of different aspects of why it's important, why there is economic benefit to maintaining bird colonies so that you can sort of get the economic benefit of folks who like to come and watch the birds. And there was some very interesting information in there. Now, I'm still going through it, but I've got a couple of observations I wanted to bring out today, as I'm sort of going through this process. Now, the first is this. The dollar figures that are represented in this study represent the money that birders spent for all wildlife watching recreation, not just birding. The expenditure data was not collected just for birding. The questions were about how they watch all different types of wildlife. So you have to sort of be careful about how you use the gross numbers that are in this document. Now, in order to get a true economic picture, I'm not sure how we break that out. As I said last week, I'm talking with some economists about this to see if we can come up with a way to do that. But that's sort of the first take out at this, that it's going to be a bit difficult because you can't just take the numbers as a whole. It's not just for birds, it's for all wildlife. The second issue with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife study, and again, these are not issues that we've sort of pulled out individually. These are things that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service actually says in their report. The GP site is not exactly an average birding site. They asked these folks who like to watch wildlife, and specifically birders, what are the locations that they prefer to observe birds in. 73% of them said they'd like to go to the woods. 69% said lakes and streamside areas. 62% said brush-covered areas. 61% said fields. Ocean, in other words, people who like to go to the ocean to watch birds, was only 27% of those, and man-made areas, 31%. So clearly, far less of the, much less than half the group saying that that's where they like to go to watch birds, which is the site we have here. Now, this is a site that is an old industrial site. It is not an ideal site in and of itself. Plus, it's not in a location that these folks like to go to watch wildlife in. So these are two issues that we're going to have to take into account. Now, that all being said, as I said last week, and I say again today, there is absolutely economic benefit to ensuring that we have the opportunity for folks to observe wildlife, especially given the community that we have here. Not just local folks who live here, but there's folks from all around the country who do like to come here and observe wildlife. And I'm not dismissing that at all, and I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't maybe in certain instances look for ways to put infrastructure in place to help really drive more revenue from that group. But the question, I think, is the GP site the right place to do that, given the fact that it is not a preferred site for folks who like to engage in this activity? And given the fact that you don't exactly have a natural environment down there, I had someone say, I'm going to just preface this by saying I don't agree with this, but I thought it was sort of funny, say that it's not really a natural site down there, obviously. If it was a natural site, then there would be predators. And so they suggested that we release a couple of Rottweilers down there. That's a really bad idea. But I think the point is that it's not a natural site. It's an old industrial site, that is not ideal habitat for the birds, nor is it an ideal habitat for people to come and watch the birds in. And so to suggest that the community ought to not redevelop the site, but instead actively promote that as a place for birding, and we're going to drive just as much revenue out of it, I still think that this is sort of the next argument that's being thrown up to try and kill this project off. I will continue to poke around on this, and if I can figure out a way to get you some hard comparison numbers to show what we might expect off of preserving the site for observing the squatter birds versus redeveloping the site as has been planned by the port and the city, I will certainly try and get that done and get you some numbers on that in the near future. But this is just sort of first take at it in looking at the report and sort of trying to drive what we might see out of it. Because, we need to come to a resolution on this. Yeah, I am sort of dismissive about this for a number of reasons, but I think not the least of which is the fact that this is, just the next item that's been thrown up. We dealt with, we don't want a marina in the ponding basin because that's just for a bunch of fat cats. It's not going to support the community. And then, you're capping the mercury in the waterway. You're not removing it, and that's not good. And we want you to remove the mercury. And then, it was, there's lots of value to those historical buildings on the site, and you're just going to knock them down, and that's not. Just time and time again, it's yet another issue. And if at the front end of this we had sort of said, okay, here's all the issues that are concerned to us, let's go through and address them, that's one thing. But it's the fact that we seem to get to the end of one, and then a whole nother big issue crops up that, I'm sorry if people think that a number of us in the business community are being too dismissive of them, but you have to understand that we've gone through years and years of public process on this, and at some point in time we need to move forward. And it just seems like that a lot of the same folks who are concerned about the squatter birds are the same folks who are involved in a lot of these other discussions too. And at some point in time, we've got to move forward. Or we're never going to look at that site as a way to really extend the downtown to the waterfront, ensure great public access to the water, a lot of the things that I think are priorities for the vast majority of people in Whatcom County and in the city of Bellingham. We need to come to resolution on this and move forward. All right.